Hey everybody, how's it going? Ruben here. Hey, so a topic came up lately that about CNC projects specifically, and I get the question from a lot of customers, and I know a lot of my friends in the CNC community do as well. Is why do 3D carvings cost so much? And it's kind of funny, and I understand, due to ignorance as far as how the CNC process works, um, is one would think, hey, the machine just cuts out the item, and there's really little to no human intervention. So why does a $5 piece of wood cost so much to have an image carved into it? Well, to kind of answer some of those questions and more for my customers, just so you can understand the work and the processes involved, I'm going to run through a little project here. I'm actually in the process of making some Christmas items for some sailors, and the process I'm going to go through is example here is a 12-inch Navy information warfare device that I turn these into magnets, put magnets in the back. So this was one I finished yesterday. But just to give you an example, 3D carving, or what we actually refer to in the CNC community, is actually 2.5D because it's flat on one side and you're talking about relief up from there. Two-dimensional carvings on CNCs are relatively inexpensive and easy to do, but when you get into relief carving such as this right here, um, then it gets a lot more time consuming, and there's a few reasons why. Number one is the design phase of each particular item. Um, Software has gotten really good over the years and really a lot more easy to use than it was in years past. Um, there is a lot of automated features in software nowadays, but there's still a lot of work that goes into it. So each one of these models, which an actual model or a vector or a shape component file, has to be designed. So whether that's taking a two-dimensional image and then creating relief, a three-dimensional image of that. So what I have open here on my computer right now is a program I use to design some projects or to import previously designed shape files and models to set up a CNC project. Now, this has to be done every time because no piece of wood is exactly the same size. So in this case, in this project that you're going to see in a little bit, I'm going to machine 4 different ones of these type of little knickknacks out of one piece of wood. So I've already gone through the steps of setting it up on my computer right here, as far as in my software, setting up in my two-dimensional view right here, my size of the piece of wood, the dimensions, and the overall two-dimensional shapes of the models that I'm going to carve on my machine. So on the right side over here, what you're looking at is based off going through the processes of what these actual models look like, is selecting different tools that I want to use for it to carve out those things. So first thing that I always use is a roughing tool pass. And what that means is out of that big piece of wood, a very large diameter mill goes and clears out all that excess wood. After that, then we select individual tool paths and configure that based off the type of tool we want to use to get the level of detail we want. So smaller equals more detail to get detail out of it. And then it'll go back and carve out all those little areas and give that detail in the relief here. So over here you can kind of see in my preview based off, let's see, I've got a roughing tool pass and then 4 finish tool paths to get the detail in all of those, and then another one because in one of these devices has some very fine detail and some lettering. So I had to add another tool path with a even smaller diameter bit to go back and clean up those areas. After that's all said and done, then there's another tool path to go back and profile all of these to cut them out of that piece of wood. So on average, even though that I have these models created, whether I bought them through another provider or designed them myself, I still have to, every time I set up one of these projects, whether it's cutting 1 or 2 or a bulk run of a bunch of them, is come in every time before I get ready to start a project, set up different where I want it in the piece of wood I'm going to cut, and then calculate all those tool paths based on that every single time. So a typical setup in the morning, I'll come in and I'll probably spend 30 or 45 minutes probably sitting here on the computer based on if I know I have a certain dimension piece of wood, and then set up all the items I want to cut out of that I want to carve, and then go through, verify all my tool paths that I get the level of detail in the actual previews that I want, and then save everything on there. I thumb drive my files over to my CNC machine outside and then set up the machine. We're going to jump into that here in a second. I don't want to make this video too long. This is really just to give an overview, just to give an idea of what goes on behind the scenes as far as getting a CNC project design, set up, ready to cut, and then to a product like this. So let's get out there and get to it. All right, so we're out here at the CNC router. What you didn't see off camera for probably about the past 30 minutes was starting up the machine and calibrating everything, because every time it's turned on, everything has to be calibrated so it knows its location, it knows the height of the workpiece. In this case, we're using a piece of about 9/10 of an inch thick cherry that we're going to carve all those warfare devices out of. Part of the setup process, why it's so time consuming, is number one, getting everything square on there so it knows a good reference point, setting up your measurements, zeroing everything, calibration, run it through checks, all that stuff. So typically I spend probably about 30 minutes getting a workpiece set up on there and everything ready to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into, right now I have a 1/2 inch end mill in the machine. And what it's going to do is it's going to go over and measure the tool so it knows how long it is. It already knows the height of the workpiece. And then it's going to start clearing out big sections of the waste material down to just about the area where the actual detailed carving is going to be. This saves a lot of time. So we're going to jump right into it. I'll show you real quick. It's going to go over and measure the tool. We're going to get ready to rock. I'm going to hook up dust collection, and then I'm going to film the next steps in time lapse, and then put a little bit of description in there as we change tools later and get to the next steps. So without further ado, let's get going. So what it's doing here actually is every time we do a tool change for a different step in the process, it goes over, touches a switch, measures that tool so it knows the length of it and the dimensions of that, so it knows where to start height-wise. So we're ready to rock right here. I'm going to hook up dust collection. Let's get to it. All right, so our roughing tool path just finished. Cleared out most of the big areas here. So we're going to switch over to, in this one, I'm using 1/8 inch ball nose mill, which is 1/8 inch diameter at the widest part of the ball at the bottom. So I'm going to get this switched over real quick, and we're going to get into start doing some of the detail carving. I am not fortunate enough to have an automatic tool changer on my machine, so I have to do it manually, but it is what it is, you know, you make do with what you got. All right, similar as before, it's going to go over and measure the tool, and then we'll get back to cutting. I think we're about 20 minutes in right now. I'm actually taking off my dust collection for this part of the video so you can see better. Doesn't make near as big of a mess as the last one, so. All right, we're gonna get into cutting. All right, and we're back. So we just finished the finishing pass on all 4 of those with the 1/8 inch ball nose mill. So one of the pins, specifically this one right here in the corner, and I don't know if you saw in the time lapse, there's a fine detail lettering area on it, so I had to make another tool path. I'm gonna swap out tools for a 1/16 inch one. It's gonna cover that area right there and go finish the detail on that. And then we'll switch out again and we'll get to running the profile pass to cut all these parts out. And then we'll go from there. So I'm gonna swap out this bit real quick and we're gonna get to it. So right now, as it's measuring this, right now on the timer, as far as the tool pass go, we're at about 262 minutes, so just under 4.5 hours right now. Probably about another 10-15 minutes to finish this pass right here. Then we'll get to cutting everything out and then kind of explain some of the steps after that point. The finished passes are done. The only thing that remains as far as the actual CNC part goes is we're going to take a small 1/8 inch end mill and we're going to go around all those parts to cut them out. Once they're actually cut out, they're going to be held in by these little tabs that are built into the tool pass. That's so that they don't break free until I actually pull the workpiece off there and then cut them out of there, break those little tabs. So I'm going to swap out this bit real quick and we're going to get to it. Here's the little guy that we're going to use right here. All right, here in a second, I'm gonna switch it back over to time lapse as I'm profiling and cutting these out. I'll give you a kind of time count once we're done, because this part is incredibly loud and messy, so I'm gonna have hearing protection on while I'm doing this stuff and using the arrows to blow out the actual groove so it doesn't get too built up and break a bit. All right. All right, so we just got done with the profile pass. Pieces are still in here because they have the tabs in there probably about 8 inches, keep them in there. We'll break those for the interview, but while they're in here, I like to take the opportunity, every time you machine something, every once in a while in some of the areas, you might have little fuzzies whatnot. So I use a little type of sanding mop on a high-speed drill setting. Since they're stuck in here, I can go to town on the face of these, deburr all that stuff before I pop them out, and then sand the edges on the belt sander. So I'm going to do that real quick. All right, let's go ahead and get these popped out of there. I know a lot of guys like to clamp their stuff down, but on some of these bigger projects, I like to screw them down. Besides replacing a spoil board, isn't that bad. I've hit clamps before with end mills and knocked a workpiece free, and I've hit screws with end mills before too, but usually when that happens, it's a large end mill and it just goes right through it. All right, so you can tell either my spoil board's out a little bit or slightly different thickness piece. So some of these pieces didn't quite go all the way through, but they're right there. I can poke through with my fingers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, I'm going to pop all these out with the box knife, cut all those tabs, pop those out, and then we'll wrap this up. All right, so we got these pieces out of here, popped out of the actual piece that they were cut out of. So you can see some of them didn't quite, left a loop, probably a few thousandths of an inch material in there, so I'll have to go through, clean that up. I do that with all these. So all the edges, there's going to be some thick spots around the edges where those tabs were that were built in to hold it in place so it didn't, fly free after it cut loose. So I go over on my 3/4 inch flexible belt sander and I profile all the edges of these on there. Now on the insides, everywhere there's like deep pockets or holes, and typically what I do is I use a Dremel with a small carbide kind of burr attachment and go through and clean up all those areas. Some of them come out pretty easy to finish up, just profiling, smoothing out the edges, getting everything nice and polished, and all the fine details. Some take a little bit of cleaning up afterwards, so it all depends on what it is. So this is a relatively simple project here. Making these, I've probably made 100 of these, so the tool pass, developing everything, getting efficient cutting going on. I've got that down for the most part, but so you can kind of imagine with bigger projects, it can start to become quite the beast, trying to design, set out all the tool paths, get the machine to do everything you want it to do. And then even though it is doing all the work, you still have to babysit it because they're not machines that can be left unattended for long periods of time. I'm always within earshot of mine, so I can hear it. Typically sound is one of the key indicators that something's wrong, whether your tool path, something messed up, you broke a bit, you ran into something. They're computers. They glitch sometimes, they crash, they do all kinds of weird, wonky things. So not everything turns out perfectly. This job went pretty smooth. I've got maybe 5 or 10 minutes of cleanup on each one of these, and then I'll probably prep them for spraying. I'm not going to do those right now for these 4 because it's not very cost effective to do 3 or 4 at a time when spraying finishes and getting everything set up for that, set up and breakdown. I'm in a 2-car garage here, so if I had a dedicated spray booth, a shop like that, then easy day. So really the point of this was to give you all an idea of some of the work and time that gets invested into making some of these projects. So you can imagine 12-inch, 4 of them today. I think I spent, let me check the timestamp. On there was right at the 5-hour mark, roughing the finishing passes and then profiling to cut them out. Then you figure I'll probably, for these 4 here, spend another 20 minutes maybe cleaning them up, the edges, sanding down the edges, all the pockets, all that stuff. and then starting to clean them up enough and ready to spray finish. For these, what I like to do, eventually I'm going to start slotting the back so people can hang them, but for the time being, I make magnets out of these, and I recess 4 pretty decent sized magnets onto the back of these, and they actually work very well for, you know, safes, filing cabinets, refrigerators, all that stuff. Make smaller ones too, but you know, you can't go wrong with the big ones. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember, this isn't by any means whatsoever all inclusive. There's so much more that I didn't show you because this video could easily go on for hours explaining everything from the design process on up to getting to project setup, machining, cleanup, and just some of the tips and tricks. And we'll save that for another time. So hope you enjoyed. Catch you later.